No balls. 2 strikes to Cole Freeze. Jerry from the stretch. 0-2 pitch. Swing and a miss! The Griffins are going back to Cary. 484.18 miles. Seton Hill's playing in the World Series. It felt like it was just yesterday. It was 8 months ago that the Griffins were competing for a national championship in Cary, North Carolina. We fast forward 8 months later, and the Griffins once again are looking to get back to Cary to compete for another Division II national championship. Hello, everybody, and welcome live to the much-anticipated 2022 Seton Hill University Baseball Season Preview Show. I'm Dan Flickinger with the Westmoreland Sports Network, and of course, you all know my guest. He is Seton Hill University baseball coach Marc Marizzaldi, the only coach in the history of the Griffs baseball program, PSAC West Coach of the Year, Atlantic Region Coach of the Year, and also how about the 600th career victory for Coach Maz and also the Seton Hill baseball program, the only coach once again in Griffin baseball history. Maz, here we are. You know, when we're recording this show, the season is about to begin. You guys open the year this weekend. Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to Griffs baseball. I can't believe it's here already.
I know. We have opening day in 4 days, but this is really my opening day. I feel like this is our big kickoff. The last 5 weeks, myself and the rest of our players, we just kind of have our nose down and we're plowing forward one day at a time trying to prepare for the season. But now it's kind of becoming a reality. It's finally game week. And this is like the time for me, this interview, where I can kind of step back, take a breath, kind of inventory what we have as we go through our roster and everything becomes real. So it's almost game day.
The only thing we need is a couch. Maybe that's during the regular season, you know, to kind of mentally break down some things for sure. We have so many things to get into here on the season preview show. But, Maz, we start with last year's incredible season, 39-8 record. The Griffins captured the Atlantic Regional title to make their second ever appearance in Cary in the Division II World Series. The Griffins won their first game and lost their next 2. Seton Hill also hosted the PSAC championship last year, which was really neat. Unfortunately, lost in 3 to Bloomsburg, but an Atlantic Regional championship, a 39-8 record, highest winning percentage in program history. I mentioned earlier your 600th career win and the 600th win for the program as well. Man, when you think back to last year, what a ride, huh?
Yeah, and that's in a shortened season. You know, our games got reduced to 40, but holy cow, did we accomplish a lot. It was magical. It was special. It was historic. I look back, and I didn't take a moment of it for granted because of what had happened leading up to the season. But I'm just so happy for our kids. They played with such a strong purpose last year. It was more than just, winning a championship. It was who they were playing for. And it wasn't an easy road either. As you know, our season got halted in the middle. Just a resilient group that was on a mission from day number one. And I wish we would have performed a little bit better, down in Cary, because I certainly know that we belong there and we had an opportunity to compete for a national championship. But at the end of the day, it goes down as one of the best seasons in the history of our program. And for that, I was just very, very proud to be part of it.
Well, you mentioned the shortened season. Obviously, it was shortened going in, and then COVID struck. A lot of adversity last year. We talk about that first. You guys get off to a 12-0 start. Your best start in program history, Maz. COVID hits. You don't play another game or practice much for about 3 weeks. And I remember when that happened, I think it was even off the air, you said, listen, we're either going to look back at this and kind of say this helped make our season, or we're going to look back at this and say it helped break our season. Obviously, you guys came back. You played 13 games in 12 days. You won 11 of those games, and obviously the rest is history. You get to Cary. So, I'm sure you had to be very proud with the way you guys responded to something crazy like that.
Yeah, and as a coach, I've done this for a while, playbook. There was no script. There was no, well, the last time this happened, this is how we deal with it. And we had some sick kids, too. We had 18 kids test positive in 1 week, 32 kids that were sidelined because of COVID or quarantine. And so during that, whatever it was, 19-day layoff in the middle of the season, it wasn't like we were practicing or doing anything to prepare. There was a few kids who weren't sick that could, but and that's probably what made me the most nervous is, we had a great start, but we had some sick kids that had to just, as soon as they were cleared, jump right back out on the field and then have to make up all those games. A typical week for us is the 4 conference games on the weekend and then 1 on a Tuesday. Well, all those conference weekends that we had to cancel were now being made up on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So we had 8 games a week for a group of kids that, had just been sick and were holding up a pretty big win streak coming into it. So there was a lot of things working against our kids, but I don't know, man. They just embraced it. They never complained about it. They never made excuses. COVID just dealt everybody a difficult hand, but our kids they just never fell back on that. It was like they had a mission. They were going to deal with whatever blows that they had to deal with, and they just plowed forward together, and it was awesome to watch.
And to have that many games and that little days, talking about the sport of baseball, I mean, you're pitching. The way it held up and the way that you guys won so many games despite that. And that, I believe, Jerry wasn't 100% at that point either, Jared Kolar. So, to combine all of those factors, pretty impressive.
That was all without Kolar. He was out for 6 weeks, So when you lose your number one, that changes things. And then when you have to double the amount of games you play in a week, there was some resilient guys, no doubt about it.
So a lot of adversity there. The Griffins didn't play real well in the PSAC championship. You had to battle some adversity heading, into the playoffs as well. All those things going on. And then, of course, this group, what they went through with Max passing, too. So when you take a look at all of the adversity you guys battled and how you came through it, Maz, again, I just have to kind of reflect back on it and just how impressive it was to go through COVID, to go through what the group went through with McLean Mons passing, and then, again, you guys not having a great PSAC championship, but you rebounded big time in the regional. It seemed like the guys were upset about how they played in that PSAC championship. Then they get to carry. So there's a lot of things that it seems like every year I say this, I think, in the preview show, there's a different story, and it really is an interesting one for the Griffin baseball program every single year and what you guys have to overcome.
Yeah, and I think the story of last year goes beyond last year. Everyone sees that we got to the World Series and they see the wins and all the individual accomplishments, but I feel like our story last year was actually started to become written back in January of 2020. And you talked about the adversity we faced last year in the season. I feel like that was no big deal to our guys. Dealing with COVID and a shutdown and all that, because of Max passing in January 2020, and then COVID shutting our pretty good 2020 season down, and then everybody kind of going their separate ways. It was so much to deal with, and I realized, over the course of the last 2 years that mental health became a real issue for a lot of our kids. Dealing with the teammate's death and then COVID. So, we had to really, I guess, coach these kids on the human side rather than the baseball side. And I think all that work that we put in from 2020 to 2021, to help them through those difficult times, prepared them for that season. And, some people would look at last season and say it was a lot of adversity, but I don't know if our guys really looked at it that way. I thought because of what they had gone through before, they looked at last year as an opportunity.
Well, as we continue to reflect back on last year, we have to mention as well, Seton Hill University Baseball won the top grade point average award, 3.41 GPA as a team. That's your 4th straight, 6 in 7 years. So, if you have a son coming here to play baseball, not only are they going to win on the field, they're going to win in the classroom, and you guys have shown that. Yeah,
and, dealing with everything we did last year and all the makeup games, I hate to say it, but our guys weren't in class a whole lot. But what a tremendous job they did to balance, athletics and academics. And as proud as we are of the championship on the field, to uphold that academic championship is a really big thing to our guys and to our program. And I was proud of them for that, too.
Big-time team performances last year, certainly for Seton Hill, but we have to talk about some individual performances as well. We start with Tommy Pellis. He was the NCBWA ABCA Atlantic Region Player of the Year, PSAC West Athlete of the Year. Tommy hit .361 with 14 home runs. Owen Sable was PSAC Rookie of the Year, hitting .364 a season ago. And if you remember, some people may say, well, wait a second, Owen was on the team a couple of years ago. That was the COVID-shortened season, so Owen did get a lot of at-bats that year, but not enough to qualify for that Rookie of the Year. So he won it last year, certainly deservedly so. Derek Orndorff, he only made SportsCenter twice, 2 times, once in Cary for some unbelievable catches in the outfield. He also had a memorable walk-off against Cal U, a home run certainly that I'll remember. Jack Oberdorf, game-winning bomb against Mercyhurst in the PSAC semifinals. Jared Kolar, despite missing time with a broken hand, was dynamite, allowed just 5 earned runs, 59 strikeouts in 38 innings last year, leading the pitching staff. Ben Vicini was really good, especially in Jerry's absence. Then you look at the seasons for shutdown relievers. Dash Bryan, Caden Wood combined for 8 saves. Peyton Reisman also had a really good finish out of the bullpen. Wow. I mean, a lot of incredible performances when you needed them. And, I mean, I could continue to go, on and on the season that Vinny Rauso had. I mean, it's just incredible individual performances last year for you guys.
Yeah, and there's some names in there that you didn't even mention that I think had the best seasons of their careers. It's kind of the perfect storm, right? Mm-hmm. When you have so many guys who had the best year of their career, I mean, special things are certainly going to happen. But at the end of the day, all those individual performances, I think what was special is just seeing how hard guys pulled for each other and how unselfish they were. Granted, like a lot of guys just stood out. You mentioned some of those heroic games and incredible plays made by some of those guys, but they all did it for each other, and it's a special thing when you see these guys kind of check their ego at the door and understand that they're playing for something bigger than themselves. But man, I was a big fan last year. It was a fun team to manage, but I don't remember having a season where I just had so many wow moments in the dugout. It was fun.
Obviously, the basketball hoop was out a lot last year.
Sure was.
Hopefully that'll still be the case. When you look at last year's senior class, Maz, obviously a big senior class. We talked about how much they have meant to the program and what they contributed last year. What will you kind of remember most about the senior class from last year?
Well, their resilience, number one, because of what they had gone through their last couple of years, and really the development that they went through and how so many of them played different roles throughout their career. I think of a guy like George Coyle, not a major contributor for us last year, pitched very, very little on an amazing season, during an amazing season, but he was in our starting rotation for 2 years, a kid who came in as a freshman, didn't pitch much, and really worked his tail off, played a big role. So when you look at that senior class, and he's just one of them that at some point during his career played a big role, they all contributed at different points in their career in different ways. Tyler Peterson, another great example, who came in as a freshman, burst on the scene, and then was starting, hitting in the 3-hole, and then got injured, and kind of just never recovered for 2 years. But then his senior year, big impact. Hits in the middle of the order, plays first base, catches, fills a big role. So they were resilient, no matter what their role was, and many of them changed throughout their careers. They stayed committed to what was best for the team, and they stayed committed to our team goals. So it was just awesome to see, how they matured and pulled for each other and just did their job on a day-to-day and a year-to-year basis.
Well, we talked about a senior class, and, we mentioned the names Kolar, Vicini, Orndorff, Pellis, Fedor, Tyler Peterson, Jamie Rabel, who was a great leader and a kid that you could plug in anywhere in the lineup, anywhere on the field. Sometimes when you lose a big class like that, Maz, there is a transition period to the new set of leaders on and off the field. How has that process gone so far?
Well, I think you're right. When you lose that many influential players, I think the character of your team is going to change. And the one thing as a coach that you try to make sure doesn't change is the culture. So we have different types of leaders this year. We have a different senior class, not that they're better or worse, or they're just different guys. But you hope that all the values and the examples that those guys from last year set, that gets passed down. Now, I hope that our culture is still as strong, our leadership is still as good, but we have different guys. They're going to lead in different ways. They're going to fill different roles. And I do see, even though they're gone, that senior class of 2021, you can see their impact. You can hear, every day in practice, hey, do you remember when Rabel said this? Or I remember Tommy Pellis taught me that. So it's so cool to see so many things get passed down and call it legacy, I guess, but tradition. There's a lot of different names for it, but I think when you have that strong tradition and there's constantly things passed down, I think you have a strong culture. That doesn't mean you're going to have the same season as you did last year, but I think the foundation is still there.
Yeah, and that's what makes a great program, and that's what has made your program, I think, great year after year to have guys pass down what they've learned to some of the new leaders. Well, let's look at this year's squad. Depending on how the lineup was worked last year, I guess we could say there was 5 of 9 returning starters this year. Again, depending on who was starting at what point last year, but. You look at the infield, and really your infield's intact coming back this year, Maz. Third baseman junior Jack Oberdorf made just 4 errors in 46 games last year. Finished with a .281 batting average, 7 home runs, 37 RBIs. We talked about his huge home run in the PSAC tournament against Mercyhurst. What stood out to you about Jack's performance last year, and how's he doing so far coming into this year?
Well, I think one thing that was great for Jack last year is he didn't have to be the guy. You know what I mean? He hit anywhere from 3 in the order to maybe sometimes 7 or 8. And he didn't have to really shoulder the load. There was a lot of other guys driving in runs, but he emerged into an elite defender. And when you look at how good our pitching staff was last year, the numbers you mentioned, some of them are incredible. That doesn't happen without great defense. And I'm sure we'll talk about Owen Sable, and we're not shy to say that we think we have the best left side of the infield in the region, if not one of the best in the country with Oberdorf and Owen. So Jack's so cerebral. He's a great student of the game. But I think, to see how incredible his jump was to become an elite defender just made such a great impact on our pitching staff and our team.
For guys like he and Sable, you look at their first full season of playing baseball. And not only a full season, you throw some plus how many postseason games you guys had last year. So it was a long season for those guys. Pretty challenging, but they held up pretty well, I would say.
It actually, I'm really interested to see how they do this year because this is a legitimate full season, right? So
I guess that's true. It was a shortened season, and then you guys made it a little bit longer, but hopefully this year it'll be even longer than it was last year.
Yeah, I mean, we played 48 games in total last year, and that's conference tournament, regional, and World Series, and this year we have 50 regular season. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we make it as far, and if we do, they're looking at 60 to 65 games. So, and they're aware of that. There's not many guys on our roster that have experienced a full 50-plus game season. So that's something we're going to have to navigate. But at the same time, every other team in the PSAC is facing the same thing the last 2 years, not a full season.
So Jack Oberdorf obviously leading the way at third base. But tell us who else is kind of in the mix at that position. I know you have some guys that are probably in the mix at a number of different infield positions.
Well, we have a couple of younger guys that are sort of corner infielders, Christian Zilli, Mike Gregos, Matt Frazetta, first base, third base type of guys. Obviously, Jack's going to be our guy, so they'll be stuck behind him for a year or maybe 2 learning from him. Max Mandler is another guy who's capable of playing third base. He's a freshman. He played third base in high school, but we kind of see him more of getting a lot of time at second base for us. Mm-hmm. And then obviously Isaiah and Owen are guys we're going to rely upon to be in the lineup in some capacity. And then we have a couple of younger guys. Jake Orr is a freshman who I think provides some versatility. He can fill in at any one of those 3 positions, third, short, or second. He's sort of like filling the role that Jamie Rabel had in the past. And then Riley Thomas and Brady Bedway are 2 younger infielders that will get most of their action on the JV for us.
So when you look at the infield, we moved to shortstop, and you mentioned, Owen Sable scored 46 runs last year, hit .338, only made 6 errors in 46 games. And you took the words out of my mouth, Maz, and usually you do because we've been together for so long and doing these interviews for so long, but an exciting left side of the infield when you compare it to many other teams, and not only in the PSAC but the region, as you mentioned, the nation. I think they would love to have an Oberdorf-Sable left side of the infield. I believe when you look back at last year, and you can correct me if I'm wrong if you know this, but it may have been the best fielding percentage in program history, at least one of the top years for that. I mean, you guys were very good, and knock on wood, it'll continue this year.
Yeah, I think we faltered a little bit down the stretch, but I know at one point we had gone, it was like 10 games without making an error. It was crazy. And again, like that's the first full season of college baseball for both of those guys on the left side. It's so impressive what they did defensively.
So, Maz, that's the left side of the infield. You look at the right side of the infield, you also have returning experience at second base. Isaiah DeAndreth is back. He hit .299 last year with 7 home runs. Kind of an up-and-down season for Zay, but he had the game-winning hit in Game 1 of the World Series for you. And when he's locked in, we know what he can do at the plate.
Yeah, I guess he's considered the veteran of that group. He's our most experienced infielder coming back. And with Zay, you know what you're going to get. You know, he's going to be tough and gritty, and he's going to compete his tail off. You know, he's a guy that's going to have to be a middle-of-the-order run producer for us. I think him and Mandler will compete a little bit together at second base. Max can move around a little bit. Zay can DH. But when he's swinging the bat well, he's going to be a major contributor for us offensively. And then over at first base, you know, we used Tanner Fralick over there last year, but he never really gained much traction. He was battling different injuries throughout the season, and he has through the offseason as well. But we think he's about as healthy as he's going to be, and he should be on the field for us. And then Eli Snyder is a guy that I think will get some time over there as well. As a freshman, he was stuck behind Peterson last year, but he's made a ton of progress over the last 12 months, and he's ready to compete for the job at first base. And then a guy who's battled a lot of injuries during his career, Brett Morris. I think Brett is finally, healthy, and he's been swinging a pretty good bat from the fall all the way through this preseason. And I think he's a guy that we're looking at to just add some offense. Now, whether he gets on the field to play some defense or not, he's going to have to battle Fralick and Snyder over there. But it's really good to see another guy that's been here for a couple of years emerge as a potential hitter for us.
Well, it's good to have that competition too, and we'll talk about Jordan Fedor a little bit later because he's still with the baseball program, and he had a really good year last year, had some big hits in clutch times, but when you look at the DH position, Jordan kind of slotted in there last year. Now, is it kind of like sometimes we'll see Zay there, maybe we'll see Fralick there and some other guys?
One position I'm sure we'll get to is a catching, and it actually depends on that. Vinny's coming off of Tommy John surgery. He looks like he'll be ready to go this year for the season. But we have some options, whereas last year it was pretty much Jordan Fedor penciled in that DH every game. But we'll have to move some pieces around. It could be Ralso, it could be Fralick, could be DeAndreth. We have a plethora of outfielders that show some really good offensive promise that we might want to get some at-bats for them in the DH spot.
Well, let's talk about behind the dish because Vinny had a really great year last year. Hit .330 with 13 doubles, led the team in that category, was really good in the postseason. I look back, he had 14 hits in 12 playoff games last year. But he also had, as you mentioned, Maz, off-season elbow surgery, so I know you expect him to be back. But, man, I mean, when you look at a kid like that and what he battled through last year to do what he did and to come in as a transfer and to just be loved by everybody, it's just a crucial player on this team, isn't he?
Yeah, it really was a perfect match. He provided exactly what we needed, exactly when we needed it. He was durable, he was tough, he played with great energy, and like you mentioned, he was fantastic in the postseason and really clutch. So a little bit concerned when he had to have surgery, but we knew it was coming, and, I mean, we kind of never let the cat out of the bag, but he played the entire year last year with a torn UCL.
Right, that's unbelievable.
Find me somebody else that can do that.
That's unbelievable.
So, he's a big piece to our offense. He's a big piece to our grit on the field and how we play. So we're excited to have him back. And And one thing we wanted to do in the offseason is bolster the depth behind him. Really, Zach Ramich was the only other catcher we had, and Vinny's status was a little bit uncertain coming off of surgery. So we went out and brought in 2 transfers, Braden Durham and Joe Battaglia. Durham has some versatility where he can play the outfield. He's very athletic. He can run. I think he's a guy that you're going to see in the lineup quite a bit for us, whether it be catcher, DH, or outfield. Battaglia is coming from a really good community college. He was a great defender. So we really wanted to add some experienced defense behind there, so he gives us that. And then we have 2 freshmen. One is Cam Colwell, and the other one is Riley Cessnack. So we with the uncertainty at the top and no real experience behind Vinny, we had to go bring in some extra catching this year.
Well, let's take a look at the outfield. You mentioned a lot of names out there. We'll just take it as a whole instead of kind of looking at left field, center field, right field. Obviously very difficult to replace Pellis's production at the plate. Almost impossible to duplicate being on SportsCenter twice last year. I mean, these guys, they have a lot to follow, right? I mean, how are they going to get back on the top 10? I hope they can, but that was insane. A couple insane catches last year for Orndorff. And, of course, we mentioned Fedor, Kenise Ejo, Carl Turner, who played well last year, Brandon Klein, the lone returner out there with experience. So, man, this might take a little while, Coach. But who has kind of taken the reins, and maybe that is to be determined to kind of see how everything sorts out at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, you're right, Dan. It is to be determined. We lost a lot of experience, a lot of production. But I think the theme for us, and I'll get to some of these guys that are going to have some opportunities, but the theme for us, when you have new players coming in and there's open spots, everybody wants to go after that starting position. And that's great. It creates a lot of competition. But we've been kind of encouraging our guys, instead of just trying to go out and win that job in center field or left field, like, let's go out and work together to do the job. We're hoping that takes some pressure off some guys. There are going to be some interchangeable pieces. I don't see us putting 3 outfielders out there and the same 3 guys or 4 guys for all 50 games. So we want them to work together to create consistency in the outfield. The thing about our outfield group is they bring different tools. Like, we have some guys that are a little bit more offensive, some that are a little bit more defensive. But you're right, Brandon Klein is the only returner. And he kind of was in that role last year where Turner and Ejo, they all brought something different to the table, and they were interchangeable the entire season long. So those 3 guys combined to get the job done every game in right field. We're going to need that type of working together, teamwork for all 3 outfield positions this year, I think. One of the coolest stories, and hopefully it'll emerge as a great story, is Neil McDermott. He's a guy that is going to play quite a bit of outfield for us. Nobody probably would have predicted that a couple of years ago when, he started his career as a 90-mile-an-hour freshman who was coming in and showed a lot of promise. And then he just kind of had his struggles on the mound, and all the way through, I think, the beginning of last year. He didn't pitch for us, but he was working out on the mound and just, really struggled with his command. And we went to him at the beginning of the season last year and said, "Hey, man, you want to play the outfield?" And he's embraced it. He's worked at it, and he's truly kind of reinvented his career, and it's been fun to see. And I can't wait to kind of unleash him and let him go out.
I'm excited about that too, Matt. He's always been a great athlete.
Yes.
Going back to his days at Greensburg Central Catholic, being a heck of a basketball player and a great leader on this team. So that'll be really neat to see him in the outfield.
Yeah, so we'll throw him out there, and Klein, obviously. And another local kid who had a pretty good run at Westmoreland Community College, Noah Sweeney. He's been a pleasant surprise for us.
Salem, yeah.
Really consistent player, a nice left-handed bat, which we didn't have many of those. And I think Sweeney will be in the mix for us. A couple more returning players, Jaden Starks and Brandon Lane. Starks is a senior and Lane's a sophomore. They're victims of being behind Tom Pellis and Fedor and Orndorff, but now's their time and now's their opportunity. So, and then Omar Ward as well, a guy who's battled tons of injury.
Yeah.
Another guy that's kind of converted from pitcher, due to injury. Now he's playing the outfield for us. So we're relying on those returning players to make an impact, or at the very least, like, carry on that culture, that those outfielders have built the last couple of years. We have some new young guys. that I think show a lot of promise and athleticism. Nate Durinsky from Ohio is a pretty good athlete. Swung the bat well for us in the fall. I think he'll be in the mix. Drew Garth, again, is another left-handed bat. Kid from North Hills High School. He's got a little bit of juice. I think he's pretty advanced for a freshman, and I think he'll be able to hit for us a little bit. Two guys that are really good outfielders, but also really good on the mound for us, freshmen that can kind of be two-way players, is Blake Barker and Jared Dowie. Both had tremendous high school careers. We're still kind of figuring out where they fit in, whether they're on the mound or in the outfield, but I think they can contribute in both places for us. And then Cooper Smith is another freshman for us. He rounds out a really athletic but inexperienced group. And the only way for us to figure out what these guys can do is throw them into the fire and, see who can get it done.
Well, and to have that competition, I mean, that breeds competition, that breeds competition on the field against your opponents as well. So, I mean, that has to be exciting, right? I mean, these guys are vying for playing time.
Yeah.
They're rooting for each other, but, hey, they're vying for playing time. So.
Yeah. So I'd be interested to see what the rest of the PSAC scouting report is on our outfielders, because there's a lot of, other than Klein.
There's no book on anybody, really. So we'll see what happens. Communication's so vital, certainly out there in the outfield. I mean, have you guys taken more steps in practice to make sure everyone's kind of, because it might be, I don't want to say revolving door, but as you said, you're not going to have the same three outfielders, every game this year. So obviously that's very important, isn't it?
Yeah. I think we try to attack that in the fall. You're pretty limited in what you can do indoors, especially with outfielders.
Yeah.
That's why we're trying to get on the field as much as we can, not just to be able to hit and do defense, but that's the best outfield practice we can get, is getting our guys outside for BP. So it's a good group. I think they've really embraced the let's get the job done together attitude, and I'm excited to see them work with each other.
Well, let's talk about the guys on the mound. You return a lot of experience on the mound, and Seton Hill had one of the best really seasons pitching-wise last year in the entire nation. It was really incredible. You lose some top-end guys, Maz, like Kolar and Vicini. We saw some really good things out of guys like John McCullough, Kevin Voppel, Aiden Layton, of course, Marshall McGraw last year. He still has that potential to be very good after Tommy John surgery a couple of years ago. And we will mention, obviously, the bullpen with Caden Wood and Nash Bryan, my gosh, but I do want to mention them after we talk about the starters. Unfortunately, John McCullough won't be ready this year. A month ago, you can talk about this, had Tommy John surgery, but where do the arms kind of slot in right now in terms of the rotation and things like that?
Well, when you lose guys like Jared Kolar and Ben Vicini, and even Peyton Reisman, had a really good season, you almost expect a big drop-off. Those are unbelievable guys that statistically were just dominant. But I think we're going to be just as good on the mound, to be honest with you. And for a couple of reasons. We bring back some really good experienced guys that pitched all the way in the World Series. And then we've really had some younger guys jump up and develop and prove themselves in practice every day. So the starting rotation, as it shuffled around last year for many reasons, will probably be a work in progress, like you mentioned, mainly because of the loss of John McCullough. He was probably, our number one or number two guy, and when you lose that top guy, everything below him has to either move up or be shuffled around. So, fortunately, we have, some non-conference, games the first 3 weeks or so where we can experiment, see who fits those roles best. But we have a lot of candidates. I think Kevin Voppel, Aiden Layton, Mike Marinchek, Marshall McGraw, Indino Vecchiola, freshman Ian Korn. We have Jack Laird. We have a lot of guys that have, I guess you can call, starter potential. But we just got to figure out how to put those guys in the roles that they're going to be the most successful. But I think Voppel is the guy that probably comes back with the most experience in terms of last year in the starting rotation, and we'll be looking at starting Kevin that first weekend in Limestone, and it looks like Aiden Layton and Mike Marinchek will be our other starters. Marinchek, a guy who threw I think 7 innings last year as a walk-on, and he was dominant. He was absolutely dominant.
He was.
And we weren't sure, is this just because we're throwing him in the 7th inning every time or what? But, he got a taste in the World Series. And then he came back in the fall, and it was the same thing. I mean, he was fantastic. So he's earned the opportunity to kind of assume a bigger role in the pitching, a much bigger role than he did last year. So that's pretty exciting. And similarly, Andino Vecchiola is a guy who
we're still rusty. We're still in the preseason. We're almost there.
Yeah,
we're almost there.
So Andino just threw a little bit for us last year. I don't want to call it mop-up innings, but, back end guy. And he has put on some weight. His velocity's gone up. He's perfected some of his secondary pitches. And he's just a really good, consistent left-handed arm. So I think he has the potential to be a starter for us. And if he isn't, he's going to play a pretty big, impactful role. Maybe that type of role that Reisman had last year, where he throws a lot in big inning, tight ball games. So we're excited about how he's developed from his freshman year to his sophomore year as well. Marshall McGraw, a guy who recovered from Tommy John surgery pretty good. He was in our starting rotation before he got hurt. And last year, the timing of his return was good. He was able to get back and pitch for us during that whole thing where we had to make up all those games. Yeah. So Marshall's another candidate. We're not sure yet where he fits in, but he's got experience. He's got stuff to start, and I would imagine he'll be more of a long, 4 or 5 inning guy for us. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have an older guy who's experienced that we can use in different roles. And then another freshman, Ian Korn. He's a guy that has really showed a lot of promise since he got here in the fall. Again, he's a freshman, but I think stuff-wise, he's as good as we have. And we're really interested to see how his stuff is going to play against some of the better teams in the PSAC. So I think Korn is a guy that, again, he'd be great out of the bullpen for us, but I think he has starter stuff. And if the opportunity arises, we might use him that way too. So I think those are kind of the maybe top 5 or 6 guys that we would look at assuming more of a starter role, whether it be on the weekends in the PSAC or midweek.
Well, I'm sure it makes it easier to use guys like Ian in a starter's role when you have the next 2 guys I'm going to talk about, in Caden Wood and Nash Bryan. Nash was voted as a preseason, so coming into this year, NCBWA All-American. He had 8 saves last year. When you combine Caden and Nash's stats, 64 strikeouts in 49 innings. Each of them had barely over a 1 ERA. Man, that has to be a coach's dream to not only have Nash, but also have Caden to kind of narrow, especially those 7-inning games, but then you get in the playoffs, 9-inning games, to kind of narrow those games down by a couple of innings when you can use both of those guys.
In my opinion, that's a difference maker. Mm-hmm. I think having that out of the bullpen just separates you from other teams. I think you've been around, Dan. You remember, I think it was the year Westchester won the national championship in 2017. Yeah. They had a pitcher, and I can't recall his name.
Off the top of my head, I can't either, but we beat him in the PSAC tournament.
We did.
When Craig Lewis decided to steal home on him. I remember that. But yeah, he was a heck of a pitcher, though.
He was incredible, and they used him.
He had a ton of saves.
He did. Yeah. He actually had, I believe he had 11 wins and 11 saves in the same season, which is totally amazing. But and he didn't start any games. So I just think every team in the PSAC is going to have at least 3 or 4 good starters. You know what I mean? But not every game is decided by those starting pitchers. And when you play those 4-game weekends, like, we might have to go to a Nash Bryan a couple times on Saturday. Well, guess what? We still got a guy on Sunday. I mean, that's just fantastic for us. So the key is, like, getting the most out of those guys. People use the term closer, and you think, 7th inning or just the 9th inning guy. Those guys are good enough for us to bring it in the 5th inning or the 7th inning and stretch them out a little bit. So it's a good thing to have experience and quality on the back end with those 2 veterans.
So who else out of the bullpen, Maz? I know you mentioned a lot of names in terms of starting roles, but other than Nash and Caden, can we expect maybe to see this year?
Well, we've had some guys that didn't play real big impacts last year, but they have improved, and they're incredibly reliable and consistent. And 2 guys that come to mind is Dylan Bonzo and Peyton Ferris. Mm-hmm. Might not have the same kind of stuff that some of these other guys have, but they're strike throwers. And when you mentioned, Dan, at the beginning of this, how, like, we had one of the top pitching staffs in the country last year, maybe in the top 4 in every statistical category. Yep. And if you had to ask yourself why, of course we had talent, but we threw strikes. and we threw a ton of strikes, and we never beat ourselves. And we recognize that's what we do in order to be successful. And I think guys like Ferris and Bonzo fit that mold. So they could find themselves, filling some roles out of the bullpen because they're reliable strike throwers. Some other guys that we hope to kind of take the next step in their career and be really good bullpen guys, Ashton Wetzler. Another guy didn't play a big role last year, but he's a little bit different look for us, a sidearm guy. He's really matured and worked his tail off in the weight room, and he's ready to kind of assume a bigger role in the pitching staff. Jack Laird is sort of a swing guy for us. Had a great summer last year up in New York. He pitched a little bit for us last year, like midweek stuff, but he's going to have to assume a bigger role as a starter or reliever. Unfortunately, one of our kind of role players last year was Cade Negley.
Yeah.
He pitched, in the postseason quite a bit. Him and Reisman were like those setup guys for us. And unfortunately, Cade's dad has been battling COVID for about the last 2 months, and he hasn't been with the team since last semester.
Oh, geez.
He's still enrolled in classes, but his obligations right now are to his family, and
Sure.
obviously we send our prayers and our love out to Cade and his dad as his dad continues to kind of battle COVID down in the hospital in Pittsburgh. So we're going to miss Cade, but he'll certainly be with us in spirit. But that leaves a little bit of a void, in that middle bullpen. We have some younger guys. Brian Perrone is a really exciting arm. Out of Franklin Regional. He throws the heck out of the baseball. Tall, athletic kid. He's a guy we really want to see pitch, and I think his stuff is really going to play against some of the better teams in the PSAC, a low to mid-90s kid. But again, he's a freshman, so we got to kind of pick our spots and make sure we're putting him in a position to be successful. Mike Klingensmith, similar to Bonzo and Ferris, is another guy. Stuff isn't overwhelming, but he pitches exactly the way that allows our team to have success. He fills up the strike zone and changes speeds down in the zone really, really well. A guy that I think is a matchup type guy for us. But again, I think he can fill a role out of the bullpen. And then Tyler Danku, Gavin Pratt, Brandon Bergert, Brennan Gray. We got some depth. I mean, those are all like mid-80s, maybe mid to high 80s arms that they're really good. They've competed pretty well in practice for us, but we've got some depth on the mound. We've been fortunate this year. We're going to add, I think we have 12 additional JV games, which is awesome.
Yeah.
As we go through this roster, a lot of new names, a lot of young kids, but a lot of competition. So we're going to make sure that these young kids have a chance to get on the field and develop in some way this year.
Well, and those JV games, as you mentioned, a lot of competition. I mean, they really hold meaning maybe more this year than other years because there's so many guys competing for open spots, right?
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah. Most certainly.
So, Maz, I ask you this every year. Who has been, that player, maybe two players, that really has been impressive through fall ball and now coming into the season starting this weekend? I don't know, maybe that I don't want to say it's unexpected, but really grab the reins and you say, wow, man, this kid is really playing well coming into the spring.
Yeah. Well, it's hard not to say Mike Marincek on the pitching side and probably Dylan Bonzo. Bonzo's just really, really solid and consistent, but Marincek, I think, has really made a big jump, which honestly isn't surprising. You know how accomplished he was as a basketball player in high school.
So was his brother, by the way.
Yeah.
He's a good basketball player as well.
So there's some competitiveness there
right.
And some athleticism, and I think Mike just needed to be a year-round baseball guy, and you've just seen him make a great jump. A guy, I don't know if he's going to play a huge role for us, but probably if you look at most improved player, Cam Colwell, he's a really special athlete who catches and can play the infield. Again, he's stuck behind Vinny Ralso behind the plate, but Cam is just really just the weight room's done wonders for him, and he's really had a great spring so far in the preseason. And then, it's hard. You don't want to put too high expectations on kids, but I feel like Max Mandler is a guy that has really shown that he can help our team in a lot of different ways. He swung the bat fantastic in the fall. He can fill third base, shortstop, second base. And for a freshman to be able to come in here and basically make an impact in many different ways is rare. So I see Max kind of being, I don't want to call him a sleeper because he's very talented, but I think he's a guy that will have a little bit bigger impact than most freshmen do in recent years.
Yeah, I remember seeing Max playing for Upper St. Clair last year against Christian Zilli for Hempfield. Now they're teammates here at Seton Hill.
Yeah,
so that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned this, but just Neil McDermott.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to see him in the outfield, and I think a couple of years ago people would not have predicted that. So that might be my sleeper pick.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to see Neil out there. So let's talk about the coaching staff, Maz. I mean, it looks a little bit different even than what it did in the fall. First of all, Tim Cronin and Ty Sullivan return. We know how much Sully has meant to this baseball program as a player and as a coach. Obviously, his older brother played here at Seton Hill, Brett, as well. And then Tim Cronin has just taken the bull by the horns as the pitching coach here at Seton Hill. Talk about how much those guys mean to you and in this baseball program.
Well, I say this with complete sincerity. The product that you see on the field last year, this year, and in the future is the direct daily work of Tyler and Tim. Tim is our recruiting coordinator. He spearheads, all of the recruiting. And Sully is more of the development guy. Tim gets him here and Sully develops the heck out of him. Obviously Tim is developing our pitching staff at an extremely high level too. But what Tyler has invested, not just in the batting cages and on the field, but also in the weight room has been impactful. When we talk about some of these sophomores, Vecchiola and Marinchek, and even when you look at Sable and Oberdorf last year as sophomores, the jump that our guys make every year from that freshman to sophomore year is truly because of the physical development. And that's a testament to Tyler and the programs that he develops for our guys and how hard he works them, in the weight room. So, Ty's continuing to work with our defense, our infield, and our hitters, and Tim is developing the pitching staff. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding.
Absolutely,
man. Those guys are. I'll go to battle with them every day against anybody in the world. Honestly, like they're so passionate about getting our guys to their full potential, and just they're Seton Hill baseball. They live it. They breathe it. I'm just so blessed to have them by my side and to lead this team. And then, Parker Lynn was with us in the fall, and Parker had an awesome opportunity at St. Vincent to go down there and be a full-time assistant. He didn't have to move. I was really excited for Parker. It's a perfect opportunity for him, and that actually allowed us to bring back Jordan Fedor. Jordan's going to be starting medical school in about a year, so he's just doing some part-time work in the hospitals right now, and his schedule worked out with ours, and it was a perfect fit. You have a guy that, had a great career here, knows what it takes to win a championship. We have a lot of young outfielders. It was perfect.
Yeah.
He's brought some really good insight and experience, and I'll be excited to have him back on the bench with us too. And then, Craig Lewis is doing his internship.
Who? Craig? Oh, Craig Lewis. I remember him. Yeah, he was decent.
Seems like a long time ago he was here, right?
No, that's awesome that he's still helping out with the program. Obviously, he played with the Orioles organization here for a little bit, but I always love talking to Craig whenever I get a chance to.
So he's here. He's able to get to most of our practices. Game days might be tough because he's working a full-time job. But so we've got, a former pro guy. Who's very accomplished. Obviously, Jordy, who had a great career. Having those guys back has been really helpful. I have to mention, too, we've added 2 student interns to our staff, who, may be working alongside you a little bit.
Yeah, I hope so.
Ricky Pitzer and Kyle Wagner are both juniors here at Seton Hill, sports management majors. We're doing a lot of new things this year with our team from a technology side and data analytics, I guess you would call it. So much that we needed to hire a couple of people to help out. So it just worked out. Those guys have been great additions. They're at practice every day. You're going to see them all over the place on game day, running some cameras, running some iPads, doing a lot of data collection. So, we're constantly kind of trying to drive forward. It's easy to be like, well, we won a championship last year, so let's keep doing the same things. But we want to go better. We want to go bigger. We want to go further. We're always trying to find those other ways to kind of develop our guys and give them the best experience. So we're doing some new things this year and had to bring some extra guys on board, and we're excited for that.
Your analytics team.
Call it that, I guess. Yeah.
It is amazing how you have to continue to evolve to kind of stay ahead of the curve in terms of the technology side of things, and obviously to help out with our broadcast. Got to give a shout out to Joe, by the way, who was amazing last year, and certainly I know that he had helped the program for a while, but the way that he helped us with the broadcast last year, give a shout out to him. And of course, a guy that we're not going to see in the dugout this year, and it's incredible to think that, is Mike Houck, who decided after over a decade to hang it up. And Houck's probably watching this right now saying, please stop talking about me, because he never wants anyone to talk about him. But, man, did he give a lot to this baseball program. I know he's still connected, still doing stuff for the program, and I'm sure he'll be in the press box a lot this year. So we got to give a shout-out to Houck for all of his, what he's given to this baseball program over the years.
Yeah, similar to our senior class last year, even though Coach Houck is gone, you're going to continue to feel his impact for years to come. Everything he's contributed, and he still does. He still helps us out behind the scene. He's always willing to, do whatever we ask him to do. But I'm sure he'll have a little bit different perspective. He won't be the anxiety will be a little bit lower sitting in a press box watching a game this year.
And if he's not there, I'm sure he'll be texting me every other pitch. Maz, April 22nd of this year, there's a game that stands out to me, or at least the start of a series, that holds a little bit of extra significance, I think. Maybe not to the baseball program as a whole in terms of wins and losses, but it's an interesting storyline. Do you know what that may be?
It's just another game, Dan.
Just another game. Do you have any idea what game I'm talking about?
I would guess it's Gannon.
It is the Gannon Golden Knights. And why is that? Because former Griffin pitcher and pitching coach DJ Cannon was hired at Gannon in the offseason, and I know how happy you are to see that, and that should be a lot of fun. Have you ever faced one of your former coaches before as a head coach? I don't think in the PSAC, right? I mean,
not that I can recall.
So this may be a first for you, and
we've had a lot of guys move on. Dan Abernathy was the head coach at Wheeling Jesuit for a year, but he had left before we had played him. But no, I think this will be it, the first time.
How about that?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm sure we'll make some kind of friendly wager on the game.
There you go.
Whatever that might be.
Gonna throw some Dino's wings. What's the place in Erie, Otis 11?
There's nowhere good in Erie to go.
No, I'm telling you, man. There's a wing place. If there was a wing place, I would find it. Trust me. I think Greeny actually told me about that, but it's called Otis 12 or 11 or something.
Okay.
So we put that wager on there. But I'm sure you had to be proud, DJ getting hired at Gannon, in the off season. Obviously, spent a few years at Chatham University as the head coach there. So the coaching tree continues for Seton Hill baseball.
Yeah, I tell you who's very fortunate is the players at Gannon, man. They got a fantastic winner and a guy that's going to take a lot of pride in the program, recruit his butt off, and obviously put a great product out on the field. I'm really happy to see that, coaching's tough, man, and when you can only do it for so long, I think, until you just got to move on. And DJ had a good opportunity at Chatham. I don't think it was the ideal thing for him, and Gannon is a position that I think he can be really successful at for a long, long time, which is kind of scary for the rest of the league.
Right.
But it'll be weird, man. It'll definitely be weird. It'll be kind of nostalgic a little bit, knowing that, that's a guy that had played, under me and coached right next side of me. But I'm super proud, and I wish him nothing but success, except when he plays the Griffs.
Of course. Yeah, we'll be big Gannon fans except for that weekend.
That's right.
Sorry, DJ. No, great to see what you're doing, man, and, we still keep in touch here and there too. So, Coach, before we talk about the schedule and how the PSAC stands up, I wanted to ask you about a couple of guys. First, Pat Monteverdi. What a story he is. He started at Division III, came to Seton Hill, obviously Division II, and then, pitched at Seton Hill for a couple of years, needed Tommy John, and then he went to Texas Tech for his graduate year. Number one pitcher for Texas Tech last year, got drafted by the Miami Marlins in the 8th round of the draft. I'm sure he had to be really proud to see the improvement and the development that Pat made over the years, and now, hopefully he's going to be a Major League Baseball player in the future.
Yeah, no offense to Virginia Wesleyan or to Texas Tech, but we consider Pat a Seton Hill draft.
Absolutely.
We're gonna claim a little bit for that, but at the same time, Pat's self-made. I mean, to take the path that he's taken, that just says so much about his desire and his work ethic and his competitiveness. I think here at Seton Hill, all we were able to do is give him structure. And to also surround him by some really hungry guys that had lofty goals similar to him. I mean, Pat wanted to win, and that's why he came here to Seton Hill. And I think as soon as he was surrounded by similar guys, his career really took off, as did his work ethic. So I hope that we played a small part in his success to this point, but now we're big Marlins fans, and we're just sitting back and rooting for Pat.
That's right. Another guy still in the Atlanta Braves organization, Kenny Wells. So I know we're rooting for him as well. Have you talked to Kenny lately?
A little bit, yeah. He kind of took a different approach this offseason. He went to a training facility out in eastern PA that really specializes in the development of pitchers, which is probably exactly what Kenny needed. He had a little bit of an up-and-down summer last year in the minors for the Braves, and he wasn't happy with it, and he said, I got to do something different. I'm going to go to a place that, is one of the best places around and train. So I'm excited to see how his spring goes, and hopefully he can reap the benefits of a lot of hard work in the offseason.
Well, you're the man, Kenny. I want to say hi to him and Tony and his family as well. They're big supporters of WSN. So let's talk about how the PSAC kind of stacks up this year, Maz. Obviously, one of the toughest conferences in baseball, in football, in basketball, in the entire country. But baseball-wise, how do you see it stacking up this year?
One of the best, toughest seasons in recent memory in the PSAC. And the reason why is I think there are many teams that are older and experienced. We mentioned Gannon. They have a big roster, similar to ours, 50-some kids. They graduated 2.
Wow.
And they were pretty good last year.
Yeah,
and they bring back all of their top guys. That's scary. Slippery Rock, very underrated team last year with incredible talent. They lost like 2 players. Mercyhurst, very talented team. They lost some pitching, but they brought back a ton of fifth-year players, hitters. Their lineup is basically going to be the same as it was last year, and it was really good. And then I think you have some teams, IUP is absolutely going to be a better team than they were last year. Clarion, and Cal, I thought was extremely underrated. Man, they kicked our butts a couple of times.
I was going to say, you always have some battles against your.
They're very good, but they also bring back some of their best players, potentially the best player in the league, and Jake McCaskey. So I think Cal's a sleeper that can do a lot of damage even beyond the PSAC. And we're not even talking about what's going on in the East. Millersville's loaded. They brought back a ton of guys. I think they only graduated 2 hitters. They brought back their number 1, their whole bullpen. Westchester, East Stroudsburg. It's going to be crazy. I think the table's flipped.
Not to mention the PSAC champion Bloomsburg Huskies, for God's sakes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You don't even include them, and it's just crazy. You got to keep. We could talk for hours about how good the conference is.
I felt like we were a little bit that team last year, where we were a little bit older than most. Obviously, we had 16 seniors last year, and we're kind of flipped, where we're more bottom heavy, and most of the other teams in the league this year are top heavy. Hopefully that means in a couple of years it'll be the other way. But it's going to be an older league this year with a lot of fifth-year guys.
Now the PSAC tournament will return to its previous format, although it was supposed to be at Slippery Rock a couple of years ago, and of course COVID canceled the season. Then last year it would have been at Slippery Rock again, but they didn't want to have all 8 teams, 4 teams in the East, 4 teams in the West, be in the same spot because of COVID. So instead, which was really neat that you guys got to host PSAC quarterfinals, semifinals, and then the championship. That was awesome, by the way, that atmosphere at Seton Hill last year. But we do return to, at least for now, the 8-team format at Slippery Rock. So is that a format that you like, or would you like actually to see what the format was last year?
I loved last year.
Yeah, well, at Seton Hill, that was awesome. But let's say you'd play somewhere else, like
I think
you wouldn't host.
I like the way it was last year because you're rewarded for your regular season. Now, when you go to the 8-team tournament at Slippery Rock, you're seeded. So if you finish first, you get the 1 seed. But playing on your home field, man, that's a whole different ballgame. It's a big advantage. So I don't know. I always like the 8-team double elimination 4 days, because if you win that, you don't win that by accident. You're legit. I think I've always said that the PSAC tournament is the toughest tournament in the country to win because it's 18 double elimination in 4 days. The regionals are only 6 or 7 teams, and now you have supers. Playing in a 3-team tournament or a 6-team is a lot different than 8. You really have to have pitching depth. You have to have some toughness and resilience in that 8-team tournament. There's no time to rest. So that's a tough setup. The way the tournament was last year, where it was single elimination in the first day and then a 3-game series, I don't know. I just really enjoyed that. I thought that was just legit baseball. And obviously with the opportunity to play on campus.
Sure.
So we'll see. We'll go back to that 8-team. Slippery Rock's a great venue.
Yeah.
Brand new turf field, so that's nice. But that 8-team tournament is a dogfight.
It really is. And, every year coming in, you have your favorites, but I feel like anybody can win it. You always see favorites, and let's be honest, we've been one of those in the past that have gotten knocked off. You see sometimes a Mercyhurst or a Millersville or a Westchester, they may go in as the top seed in the East or West, and you see them get knocked off. And it's surprising maybe at first, and you think, well, actually, it's not because of how much depth there is in the conference.
If you do some research, Dan, maybe before the tournament this year, I don't know the exact number.
That's my homework. All right, let me write this down.
But I think in the last probably in the last 15 years, I think the winner of the PSAC tournament had only won the regional twice.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to your point, anybody can win that tournament.
Yeah.
But winning that tournament doesn't necessarily mean you're the team that's going to advance to the World Series. It's been really interesting to see how the PSAC winner, this year's another example. We didn't win it, the PSAC, but we ended up winning the regional. So
yeah, and you would think whoever wins the PSAC has the best chance at doing that, and that hasn't been, I guess, the case over the years. The proof is certainly in the pudding. Well, Maz, we've gotten to kind of the end of the show here, but we'll talk about your schedule. First of all, this weekend, Seton Hill opens up the season at Limestone on February 19th and 20th, depending on when you're watching this. And then the Griffins have a 3-game series, weather permitting, hopefully it's going to happen, here at home against Walsh on February 25th, 26th, and 27th. And then 7 games in Florida against some really good teams. You can touch on that. And then Seton Hill hosts Lemoyne in a 3-gamer when the Griffins get back from Florida before opening PSAC play against Pitt Johnstown on March 25th. Another cool spot on the schedule, I believe I read this right. You play Millersville and Altoona. Or are you playing at whatever they call it now? They used to call it Blair County Ballpark. Is that
we are
where you're going to be?
Yeah,
that's really
be a pretty
neat.
Cool game.
So kind of talk about how that maybe came together with Coach Sheehan over there, and just your schedule as a whole.
Well, we're excited to get down to South Carolina and open up against Limestone. We just have so many new players on the mound and in the outfield. I'm excited to just throw some guys out there and see what happens that first weekend. It'll probably be 75 and sunny here against Walsh.
Yeah,
so
right.
No worries
Sure.
about that.
We'll be good.
But it'll be nice to squeeze a home series in before we go down south to Florida.
That hasn't happened too many times in the past, I don't think, right?
It has not.
Maybe a game
just a
here
couple.
or there. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yep. So we're hoping for some good weather at the end of February. But our Florida schedule, again, it's just those are just 7 good games. But wow. Just that week alone may end up making our schedule one of the toughest in the country. I think the PSAC is going to be really good this year. And then when you add in, you've got Millersville, you've got Tampa, Florida Southern, Ashland, Mankato, Augustana. There's 3 national champions in there. and probably just in our week in Florida, the opponents that we're playing have probably been to 50 World Series. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So shame on the head coach for making such a ridiculous schedule. But
you don't shy away from it, though. I respect that, and I think a lot of other people
I think it's going to be, I don't want to say eye-opening, but I think it's going to be a good experience for our club. We're young. Our guys are going to see right away, okay, this is the caliber of baseball we need to play if we want to get to Cary again. It's good to know that early in the year and give us a benchmark to shoot for the entire season. But, it's going to be a tough schedule inside and outside the PSAC, but we wouldn't have it any other way. We want to play the best.
Yeah. And how did the game with Millersville come together in Altoona?
Well, I think for us to travel to Millersville is about 3.5 hours. It's a little bit far for a midweek for us and also for them. And Coach Sheehan had a contact at Altoona, and I said, that's about halfway. Let's see if we can make that work. And fortunately, the two of us, talked to some people and we were able to work it out. And we hope, it depends on the schedule, the Pirates minor league schedule, we hope to make that an annual thing where we play them
fun.
every year in Altoona.
Yeah, two of the best teams in the PSAC playing at Altoona. That'll be really fun. Mm-hmm. All right, well, I have reached the end of my questions, so I guess that will do it for the show. Again, Seton Hill will open up the season this weekend at Limestone. They will also, again, play Walsh at home. Games will be streamed. I'm not sure exactly how, in terms of the Walsh series, how everything's working out there. But what we can tell you with 100% certainty, we will have the broadcast of the Florida games on audio. Folks can listen to it. But when we're back here on the Hill, we will have video broadcast of every single PSAC game, also the playoff games as well, with our center field camera and all the other cameras that we have behind the plate and down the line, and there'll be players helping us out with that and various others as well. We're really excited once again to be working with you, Maz, and certainly working with this baseball program. It's honestly my favorite time of the year. We have Seton Hill baseball, the weather getting a little warmer anyway, but we got that press box now, so we're going to be nice and warm, and we're just really excited to see the 2022 Griffs.
Well, you're being modest, Dan. You forgot to mention that we will have the best broadcast in Division II baseball, thanks to Westmoreland Sports.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Yeah,
that is the truth. So if you made it this far in this interview, make sure you tune in to see the best Division II baseball broadcast in the country, thanks to Dan and Westmore. No, thank you for everything that you've done. You made it to Cary with us last year. Yeah, you mentioned all the postseason games, which I think the PSAC should thank you for putting on this awesome postseason broadcast. But on behalf, again, of our alumni, our parents, who will be following you in Florida, and all of the fans of Seton Hill baseball, thank you for all that you do for us.
Well, thanks, buddy. I love it. Love hearing from the parents. Again, our email box is always open during all the games. We want to hear from you. Send us a shout out, whether it be on Twitter or on email. Obviously, you can follow Seton Hill baseball on Twitter, Instagram. Those guys do it. You guys do an amazing job. I think Sully kind of. You do your part, too. Sully does his part. You guys all do a social media.
Yeah, it's a team effort.
You do a great job. You guys do a great job. So don't forget to follow Seton Hill Baseball on Instagram and Twitter, and obviously Seton Hill Athletics as well. We have so much more to talk about. We'll do that during the season, Maz. Congratulations on all your success.
Thanks,
Love
Dan.
to see it, and good luck this year, all right, buddy?
Thank you.
That is Coach Marc Marizzaldi of the Seton Hill Griffins. I'm Dan Flickinger with the Westmoreland Sports Network. We'll have baseball this weekend. You can follow on live stats. Maybe they have a stream. I'm not sure. I know a lot of schools do that now, at least have some type of live stream. So you can check that out on the Seton Hill Athletics page on the baseball page. So we will talk to you when we talk to you, whether it's the Walsh series or down in Florida. Don't forget to follow Seton Hill University Baseball on social media and, of course, on the Westmoreland Sports Network. Until then, goodbye, everybody. This has been the 2022 Seton Hill University Baseball season.